My name is Brenda Hamilton, 32 years old. The Uber rolled to a quiet stop in front of my parents' house at exactly 6:00 p.m. on Christmas Eve, just as planned. Early enough to look dutiful, late enough to avoid the interrogation that usually came with my arrival. Through the frosted window, I could already see Tyler's new truck, the one he'd been parading all over the family group chat for weeks. Chrome rims, custom paint, and a vanity plate that read "self-made." The irony almost made me laugh. He had no idea that his self-made dream had been paid for, in part, by me. The door opened before I could even ring the bell. "There she is." Mom's voice was syrupy and bright, a little too bright. She pulled me into one of her floral-scented hugs. "Did the ride service find the house okay? You know, GPS doesn't always work out here." "Found it fine, Mom." "You really should learn to drive, sweetheart," she said, already steering me inside. "At your age, it's becoming odd." I smiled thinly. At my age, I held 4 pilot licenses and managed global air routes. But explaining that to my family always felt like explaining calculus to people who refused to believe in numbers. Then came Tyler Beer. In hand, smirk ready. "Uber again," he drawled. "What's that $20 each way?" $40 to get to Christmas dinner, real financial genius. I set my bag down. "Good to see you too, Tyler." He grinned, half patronizing. "Just saying gas money for my truck would have been cheaper. But you never offer." "You're right," I said softly, meeting his eyes. "I should contribute more." That startled him. "Yeah, well, you should." Dad emerged from the living room wearing the same red and green sweater he'd worn every Christmas since I was 10. "Our non-driver made it," he announced. "How was the ride?" "Smooth." "Must be nice," he said, "having people cart you around everywhere. No responsibilities, no payments, no insurance, no ownership." It wasn't a question, it was an accusation. "I manage my finances differently," I replied, evenly. "That's one way to put it," he muttered. The familiar ache started to crawl into my chest, that combination of defensiveness and exhaustion that always came with being home. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I didn't check it. Not yet. The house smelled like cinnamon pine and ham. Garlands hung from every surface. Mom had outdone herself as always, a 12-foot Christmas tree, perfectly coordinated gold ornaments, and probably $5,000 worth of decorations she couldn't afford. I wondered briefly if they'd maxed out the same credit cards I'd secretly paid off last year. "Come help with the potatoes," Mom called from the kitchen. "Your sister should be here any minute. She's bringing her new boyfriend." "The doctor." "The orthopedic surgeon," I murmured. "Right." Mom smiled meaningfully. "Very successful. Drives a Mercedes." She said it like a warning disguised as admiration, a reminder that I was falling behind in the imaginary race she'd invented. When Melissa finally arrived, she was radiant. Perfect hair, designer coat, new diamond earrings. Bradley, the doctor, followed her in tall, polished smug. Dinner wasn't even ready yet, but the performance had already begun. Bradley shook Dad's hand. "Terrible traffic tonight," he said. "Of course the Mercedes handled it beautifully. German engineering, you know." Dad laughed appreciatively. "Beautiful car. Did you see Tyler's new truck?" "Oh yes," Tyler puffed up. "F-350 lifted custom job. Cost a fortune, but when you're self-made..." The word self-made hit me like static in the air. Melissa joined me at the counter, grabbing a glass of wine. "Hey, sis. How'd you get here?" "Uber." She blinked, lowering her voice. Still. "Honestly, it's embarrassing. Bradley asked if maybe you had, a DUI or something. I didn't know what to tell him." "Tell him I prefer not to drive." "That's weird. Normal people drive, Brenda. Normal 32-year-olds have cars." "Normal people also mind their own business." She laughed, a tinkling sound coated in judgment. "I'm just worried about you. We all are." I stirred the potatoes. "I'm fine, Melissa." "Are you, though?" she asked, sipping her wine. "No car, no house. That tiny apartment you rent. Tyler said your furniture's from IKEA." My hands tightened on the spoon. "Tyler's been to my apartment once 3 years ago." "Still IKEA at your age," she sighed. "That's concerning." My phone buzzed again. This time I checked it. "Captain Morrison, fleet status update needed." I typed quickly under the counter, "Brenda standby status maintained. Will advise." "What's that?" Melissa asked, leaning over. "Work," I said. "Still doing that transport coordination thing." "Aviation services," I corrected. She wasn't listening. She'd already turned to Bradley, whispering about Aspen vacation homes and ski resorts. Dinner was called at 700 sharp. The table looked like a magazine spread, candlelight, crystal, and tension. Dad clasped his hands. "Let's say grace." We bowed our heads. He thanked God for Tyler's business success, Melissa's promising relationship, and Mom's cooking. He didn't mention me. When he finished, Tyler leaned back. All right, everyone. Let's share our biggest accomplishment this year. I'll start. Of course he would. He bragged about expanding his company by 40%, hiring employees, and landing the Morrison Corporate Park contract. The table erupted in applause. I smiled faintly. I'd brokered that deal. Morrison Enterprises was one of my subsidiaries. Melissa went next, glowing as she spoke about her promotion and new boyfriend. Bradley added his surgical triumphs and the Mercedes. When it was my turn, Dad turned to me expectantly. And you, honey? What about you? I had a good year, I said. Specifically, Tyler pressed, smirking. Business expanded. Revenue increased. Managed several major projects. Melissa tilted her head. Your transportation thing. Aviation services. Are you making any money yet? Dad asked. We're profitable. Tyler laughed. Profitable enough to buy a car, or are you still Ubering everywhere? I set my fork down slowly. I use various transportation methods. He leaned forward. That's a no, then. Come on, be real. 9 years in, still nothing to show. I built my company from nothing. And you, what do you even do again? My phone buzzed once more. Captain Morrison weather window, optimal. Confirm status. I glanced down at the message, heartbeat steady. Then I looked up at my brother, smiled faintly, and said, You'll find out soon enough. The tension at the table had its own rhythm. The clinking of silverware, the faint hum of Christmas music from the living room, and the occasional snide remark that floated like a dagger disguised as small talk. Tyler speared a slice of ham smirk, never far from his lips. So let me get this straight, he said. You run some kind of booking service for planes. Not quite, I replied evenly. Like a travel agent, he pressed. You find tickets for rich people. Melissa giggled into her wine. Oh, Tyler, don't be mean. She turned to me, all false sweetness. It's not like she's a travel agent. She's, what was the term again, Brenda? Aviation operations coordinator. Melissa nodded dramatically. Right. Sounds very official. Bradley, the surgeon, chimed in. Interesting. So you work for an airline? I own one, I said, voice calm measured. The silence that followed was brief. Just long enough to be uncomfortable before it was drowned by Tyler's laughter. You own an airline. Oh, that's a good one. He leaned back amused. I'll give you points for creativity. Dad chuckled under his breath. Brenda, you've got to stop making up stories. People will start thinking you're serious. I am serious, I said. Melissa looked at me like she was indulging a child's fantasy. Oh, sweetheart. If you owned an airline, you wouldn't be living in that tiny apartment. Or taking Uber to Christmas dinner, Tyler added. Mom put her hand on mine, gentle but patronizing. We know you've had a hard few years, honey. You don't need to impress anyone. That word, impress, sank deep. They thought everything I did was about proving something. They didn't realize I'd stopped trying years ago. My phone buzzed again. Captain Morrison, confirm holding pattern. Await coordinates. I typed back beneath the table, Brenda maintain altitude. I'll advise shortly. Always on that phone, Dad muttered. Who keeps messaging you? Must be some real important people. They are, I said simply. Tyler rolled his eyes. Right, your imaginary pilots. I looked up at him. Yes. He blinked, thrown off by my seriousness. Wait, are you saying that literally? I didn't answer. Mom stood and began serving food as if to reset the tone. Brenda mashed potatoes. I nodded, watching as she moved with careful domestic choreography, pretending everything was normal, when the truth was, this house had been 1 bad month away from foreclosure before I intervened. Dad poured himself wine. You know I worry about you, he said in that tone that pretended to care, but always carried judgment. You're getting older. You should think about stability. A car, a mortgage, maybe a husband. Tyler snorted. Yeah, can't afford a car, but wants to own a company. Priorities, huh? I swallowed the burn in my throat. Some people invest differently. Bradley raised an eyebrow. How so? I looked him straight in the eye. Some of us build empires instead of appearances. Melissa laughed out loud. Oh my God, that's dramatic. I smiled faintly. Not as dramatic as it's about to get. They didn't notice the edge in my tone, or maybe they did, but mistook it for another empty threat from the family underachiever. I remembered being 23, sitting at this same table talking about my dream to start a private aviation company. Tyler had laughed then, too, called it fantasy nonsense. Dad had told me to get a real job. Melissa had called it a phase. They never understood how much those words hurt, how each dismissal carved a scar that eventually hardened into silence. Now, 9 years later, they still saw the same quiet Brenda. What they didn't see was the woman who owned aircraft that could cross oceans before Tyler's invoices cleared. The room filled with laughter again at my expense, of course. Tyler was mimicking me, telling Bradley about how I once asked to borrow his old Honda years ago. Melissa chimed in, exaggerating the story. Mom didn't stop them. I sat there letting it all wash over me. The ridicule, the dismissive glances, the pity masked as love. It was the same play they performed every holiday. The same lines. The same stage. Only this time I held the script. My phone vibrated again, and this time I didn't hide it. Captain Morrison, fuel levels optimal. ETA 22 minutes. Awaiting landing clearance. I locked eyes with Tyler. You asked what I do, I said quietly. You're about to find out. He laughed again, oblivious. Sure I am. But something in my tone made Mom glance up her smile, faltering just slightly. What's that supposed to mean, she asked. I checked my watch, calm as ever. It means I have 3 aircraft inbound. ETA 20 minutes. Melissa frowned. Inbound. Landing, I said simply. Tyler barked a laugh. What in the street? In the backyard. Bradley looked confused. Wait, are you serious? Completely. The room fell into a stunned silence, half disbelief, half amusement. Dad set down his fork. Brenda, he said slowly, what exactly are you talking about? I didn't look up. My phone buzzed again, and I typed a single word, proceed. The faint sound of thunder rumbled in the distance, low, growing mechanical. Tyler frowned. What is that? I smiled, finally meeting his eyes. That, I said softly, is my transportation. The sound started as a faint hum, almost blending into the winter wind outside. But within seconds it deepened, a layered, throbbing roar that didn't belong to thunder or passing traffic. The chandelier above the dining table rattled lightly. Tyler frowned. Is that a plane? Dad stood moving toward the window. There's no airfield nearby. I rose from my seat. There is now. Melissa laughed nervously. Oh, stop it, Brenda. You're scaring Mom. Mom clutched her wine glass tighter. What is going on? My phone rang again, clear, authoritative tone. Captain Morrison, ma'am. All 3 aircraft are holding pattern at 6,000 feet. Visual confirmed. Permission to begin descent. Proceed, I said evenly. Formation landing. Maintain visual spacing at 800 meters. Dad spun toward me. Who are you talking to? My pilot, I said simply. Tyler scoffed. Your pilot? Yes, 3 of them technically. The family stared as I continued, my voice calm, detached, almost clinical. Coordinate approach vectors for the Gulfstream Global and Falcon. Full visual impact. Maximum safety protocols. I want clean footage for PR archives. Yes, ma'am, Captain Morrison replied. ETA 18 minutes. Copy that. Notify local ATC and law enforcement of scheduled landing. They have my prior clearance codes. Understood. I ended the call and placed the phone on the table. The silence that followed was thick, the kind that feels like pressure on the skin. Tyler was the first to break it, laughing too loudly. That was cute. Real convincing. You almost sound like you believe yourself. I didn't respond. I just checked my watch. 17 minutes. Enough, Dad said sharply. You've made your point. This joke has gone far enough. It's not a joke. Planes cannot land in our backyard. Brenda, Mom's voice cracked. You're being ridiculous. Actually, I said they can. Your property is 4.3 acres. I checked the topography when you bought the house. Mom blinked. You checked. Standard procedure, I said. Safety assessment. Safety for what Tyler demanded. For tonight. He threw his napkin onto the table. You've lost it. Seriously, you've completely lost it. Melissa tried to laugh, but her voice trembled. You're joking, right? Please tell me you're joking. I looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time she seemed unsure of herself. The laughter didn't reach her eyes anymore. Then the windows began to tremble. Outside, the low rumble swelled into a full, body-shaking roar. The lights flickered. The family froze as a formation of lights broke through the clouds above 3 bright, synchronized beacons descending toward the property. Tyler's beer slipped from his hand and hit the carpet, foaming at his feet. Dad whispered, "What the hell? Those aren't actually," Melissa started, but her voice failed. I walked calmly to the glass door leading to the patio. The night outside was alive with wind and noise, the snow swirling in a perfect storm of motion and light. The 3 aircraft approached in perfect alignment, their silhouettes massive, elegant, and unmistakably real. Jesus Christ, Bradley murmured. Tyler stumbled closer to the window pale. No way. I turned to them, folding my hands loosely in front of me. You asked what I do. This is it. The jets came lower now, engines thundering through the quiet suburban neighborhood. Neighbors were already emerging from their homes, phones raised, filming the impossible sight. Mom grabbed Dad's arm. Tell me this isn't happening. Dad's mouth opened, then closed again. I I don't understand. You never did, I said softly. The floor seemed to vibrate as the first jet, the Gulfstream G650, began its landing sequence. The second and third followed seamlessly, their lights cutting through the fog like something out of a dream. Tyler's voice broke. Brenda, what are those? My fleet, I said. His laugh this time was small hollow. You're serious. Very. The jets touched down with a synchronized hiss of snow and power, one by one, perfectly aligned across the open field behind the house. The roar echoed off the surrounding homes, setting off a chorus of car alarms. Mom covered her mouth. Melissa dropped her wine glass. Formation landing complete, I said quietly. Right on schedule. No one moved. No one breathed. Then, as the engines powered down, the night filled with the sound of voices, professional, crisp, coordinated. 3 crews in immaculate uniforms emerged, moving like clockwork, toward the patio boots crunching in the snow. One of them, tall, confident, in full captain's attire, approached and saluted. Captain Morrison, ma'am. Fleet delivered as requested. Excellent work, I said. Perfect timing. Tyler staggered backward, nearly tripping over a chair. This isn't possible. Possible, I said, is just a word people use when they've never seen what I've built. Mom sank into her chair. Dad's face was ghostly white. Melissa's whisper barely carried. You actually own those. Among others, I said. 53 aircraft to be exact, plus 86 helicopters. No one spoke. Outside, the flight crews stood in formation, waiting for orders, their breath misting in the cold air. Lights from the jets painted the snow in gold and silver. The same house where I'd been called a failure every Christmas was now lit by the glow of my empire. Tyler was trembling now. You paid for all this. Yes. He swallowed hard. How? I told you, I said quietly. Aviation services. And then, with a calmness I didn't recognize in myself, I picked up my wine glass, raised it slightly, and said, Merry Christmas. The roar of engines faded into a rhythmic hum, leaving the air dense and electric. Outside, the 3 aircraft sat like metallic giants under the moonlight wings, gleaming snow, swirling around their landing lights. The neighborhood was in chaos. Car alarms, blaring dogs, barking people emerging from their homes with phones raised, filming the spectacle no one would ever believe. Inside the dining room, silence. Pure, suffocating silence. Mom's hand shook around her wine glass. This can't be real, she whispered. It's very real, I said softly. Would you like to step outside and see? Dad was still frozen by the window, his face pale and rigid. He looked like someone watching a ghost crawl out of the past. Tyler finally found his voice. You hired actors. You must have. There's no way those are yours. I smiled faintly. You think I staged 3 multi-million-dollar aircraft landings for a prank? He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Bradley, the surgeon, stepped closer to the window, his analytical instincts fighting disbelief. Those are real jets, he murmured. Gulfstream Global Falcon. His eyes darted toward me. Those are all top-tier private aircraft. Each one costs tens of millions. 65, 73, and 58 million respectively, I corrected gently, depending on configuration. Melissa's voice cracked. You're serious? I'm very serious. A knock sounded on the glass patio door. Captain Morrison, tall and composed, stood outside uniform, crisp, even in the freezing air. His breath formed steady clouds as he waited. I slid the door open, cold air rushing in. Ma'am, he said, saluting. Fleet landed safely. Perimeter secured. Engines idle. Local authorities have been notified of controlled landing. Thank you, Captain. Excellent work. Always a pleasure, ma'am. He handed me a sleek tablet. Flight logs and pending confirmations for your review. Also, operations request confirmation on the Singapore meeting tomorrow morning. I nodded. Tell them to proceed with standard preparations, and Captain inform the crew to hold for family guests. They may wish to board. He gave a knowing glance toward the wide-eyed figures behind me. Understood, ma'am? When I closed the door, the family still hadn't moved. Dad finally spoke, voice trembling. Brenda, who are you? I looked at him not with anger, but with a kind of tired tenderness. The same person I've always been. You just never listened long enough to find out. Mom's lips quivered. Those jets are really yours. I nodded. Mine and the company's. I own 60% of Transglobal Aviation. We operate in 14 countries. Bradley blinked rapidly. Transglobal. Wait. He fumbled for his phone, typing furiously, scrolling through search results. Then he stopped staring at the screen as the color drained from his face. You're listed as CEO. Forbes lists your net worth at 2.1 billion. The room went dead quiet. Tyler dropped back into his chair, speechless. His self-made confidence evaporated into dust. Mom covered her mouth with both hands. Oh my God. I took a slow breath, steady, controlled. Dad, you once told me that people who don't own cars lack direction. You said independence starts with having keys in your hand. I smiled faintly. I chose a different kind of key. He sat heavily, rubbing his temple. I'm telling you that for 9 years I've been building something you couldn't even imagine. I stepped closer to the table. And while you mocked me, I was paying your debts. Mom froze. What? The credit cards, I said softly. The $47,000 you thought were forgiven by the bank. That was me. I paid them off. Her eyes filled instantly. No, you didn't. I did, I said gently, because I didn't want you to lose sleep. Dad's voice was low, almost broken. The mortgage restructuring was that you too. I nodded. You were 3 months behind. I bought the note, refinanced it under a shell subsidiary. You thought the bank gave you a break. He leaned back, hands trembling. Why didn't you tell us? Would you have believed me? No one answered. Tyler's face contorted shame, battling denial. You said you invested in Venture Growth Partners. I am Venture Growth Partners, I said. You didn't get that $400,000 from a mysterious investor, Tyler. You got it from me. His eyes filled. You've been funding me. For 3 years. The Morrison Corporate Park contract you bragged about, I paused. That's one of my properties. He pressed a shaking hand over his face. I mocked you. Yes, repeatedly. I didn't know. You didn't want to know. Melissa, pale and silent until now, finally whispered the house too. Yes, I said. 5 years ago. You thought you inherited it from a distant relative. You didn't. I bought it, put it in your names. I wanted you safe. Tears streamed down Mom's cheeks. Brenda, why? Because you're my family, I said quietly, even when you didn't act like it. Outside, the aircraft lights pulsed rhythmically across the snow. It looked almost wholly surreal, cinematic, like some divine visitation. Except it wasn't divine. It was the consequence of years of being underestimated. Tyler finally spoke, voice cracked. I called you a failure. Yes, I mocked you in front of everyone. You did. He swallowed hard, eyes wet. And you saved my company. Yes. He broke down, head in his hands. I'm sorry. God, I'm so sorry. I didn't answer. I just looked out the window at the 3 jets idling in the cold wings, shimmering under the winter sky. The world outside was still staring, filming, whispering. For once I didn't care. Let them see. Let them all see. Behind me, Mom sobbed quietly. Dad just stared. Melissa was shaking, clutching Bradley's hand. I turned back to them and said calmly, Dinner's over. It's time for the truth. No one moved when I stood. The table still glittered with crystal and candlelight, but the warmth was gone, replaced by stunned silence and the weight of realization. Outside, the snow reflected the blue-white glow of the aircraft lights. The neighborhood was alive with murmurs, flashes, and curiosity. 3 private jets in a suburban backyard, it was the kind of thing that would trend by morning. Come, I said quietly. You wanted proof. Let me show you. Tyler looked up, eyes bloodshot. You're serious? Deadly. I motioned toward the patio. Mom hesitated, trembling. It's freezing. Don't worry, I said, pulling a coat from the rack. The Gulfstream's cabin is heated. She blinked. The what? The big one, I said simply, and stepped outside. The air was sharp and clean, carrying the low rumble of idling engines. Snowflakes glimmered under the landing lights. The 3 aircraft loomed over us like monuments, silver sleek and impossibly real. Mom gasped when she saw the pilots standing at attention beside each plane. They're waiting for you. Of course they are. Captain Morrison met us halfway across the yard. Ma'am, he said, saluting. All systems secure. Shall I open the Gulfstream for boarding? Yes, I said. Let's give them the tour. Right away. With practiced precision, he lowered the staircase. Warm light spilled from the cabin door, golden against the snow. Mom clutched Dad's arm. This is really happening. Go ahead, I said. After you. They climbed hesitantly. Melissa behind them, Tyler, last, still pale, still silent. Bradley followed his eyes, flicking over every rivet and panel, trying to rationalize the impossible. When they entered the cabin, the collective gasp was almost musical. The interior of the Gulfstream was pure luxury, cream leather seats, dark walnut accents, soft lighting that seemed to hug the room. The faint scent of cedar and jet fuel mingled in the air. Mom brushed her hand over a seat. It's beautiful. It's functional, I said. My office, my bedroom, my conference room. I live here more than anywhere else. Dad turned slowly in place, absorbing every detail. The inlaid gold trim, the touchscreen panels, the mounted tablet displays, showing flight data in real time. How much does something like this cost? This one, I said. 65 million, give or take. About 4 million a year to operate. He staggered slightly, gripping the seat. 65 million. Yes, worth every cent. Tyler sank into one of the chairs, running his hands over the stitching like it might disappear if he blinked. I called you a joke. I met his eyes. You did. He swallowed hard. And you were paying for my payroll while I did it. Yes, I said softly. Every one of your employees' paychecks cleared because I signed them. He covered his face, shoulders shaking. Bradley stood near the control panel, scrolling on his phone again, eyes wide. Brenda, he said slowly. Your company, Transglobal. You operate over 50 aircraft worldwide. 53, I corrected. 86 helicopters, plus 4 regional airlines, 6 medical contracts, and several government partnerships. Melissa turned stunned. Medical contracts? Yes. Emergency air transport. Disaster response. Organ transfer logistics. Her lip trembled. You save people's lives. In a way, yes. She looked down. All this time I thought you were doing nothing, that you were drifting. You saw what you wanted to see, I said. You all did. Mom was crying again. Quiet, shaking sobs that broke in her chest. Why didn't you tell us? Why keep this from us? I sat down opposite her. Because you didn't want to know. The moment I said I was building something, you called it a phase. When I asked for patience, you called it failure. I realized you preferred me small. Mom's eyes filled with guilt. No, I just wanted you safe. No, I said gently. You wanted me familiar. The engines outside thrummed softly, a reminder of how far away my world was from this one. Dad cleared his throat, voice rough. That investment company, Venture Growth Partners, that was you. Yes, and you've been funding us for years. He exhaled shakily. God. Bradley sank into a seat, staring at the digital flight map projected on the wall. A glowing web of routes crossing oceans and continents. You run an empire. I run a business, I said. Empires fall when pride gets in the way. The cabin door opened slightly, and Captain Morrison reappeared. Ma'am, operations needs your signature on the Amazon acquisition. They're ready to confirm. Tyler blinked. Amazon what? I smiled faintly. Their aviation division. We're buying it. Dad's head snapped up. You're buying part of Amazon. Not part, I corrected. The whole aviation sector. Around $3 billion, assuming the maintenance facilities are included. Captain Morrison handed me the tablet. I scrolled signed and passed it back. Counteroffer accepted, he said. Congratulations, ma'am. Thank you, Captain. When he left, the silence was heavier than before. Melissa stared at me like she was seeing me for the first time. You're negotiating billion-dollar deals while we're arguing about gas money. Yes, I said. Mom covered her face. We treated you so horribly. I let out a long breath. You treated me like what you believed I was. The failure daughter. The one who never grew up. I stopped correcting you because you never listened. Tyler looked up, eyes red. I don't deserve your forgiveness. Maybe not, I said quietly. But I'm offering it anyway. He broke then, sobbing into his hands. The sound echoed faintly through the cabin, swallowed by the hum of the engines. Melissa reached across the aisle, grasping my hand. Can we start over? Maybe, I said. But you'll have to meet me where I actually am, not where you wish I'd stayed. They all nodded through tears. Even Dad, stiff and proud as he was, couldn't speak. I looked out the window. Snow swirled against the wing lights, scattering like glass. The same sky that used to feel so far away was now mine to command. You see, I said softly, this was never about revenge. It was about truth. You thought I was small because I didn't shout. You mistook silence for weakness. But sometimes silence is just strategy. The room went still again. Outside, the crew began preparing the runway for departure. I stood. Tomorrow, I said, we'll have dinner again. Properly this time. Mom wiped her tears. Here, I smiled. No, up there. They followed my gaze to the sky beyond the window, black, endless waiting. Christmas dinner, I said, at 35,000 feet. The following evening, the neighborhood looked nothing like it had the night before. The snow was untouched again, but the marks from the jet tires had frozen into faint silver grooves across the lawn, a reminder that something extraordinary had happened. By 4:45 p.m., my parents, Melissa, Tyler, and Bradley, were waiting outside dressed in their best clothes. No one dared to be late. For once, they were early, subdued, uncertain, humble in a way I had never seen before. At exactly 500, the Global 7500 descended through the dusk like a ghost made of light, The engines hummed low and controlled, this time gentle against the quiet evening air. It touched down with precision graceful as a whisper. Captain Morrison was the first to emerge immaculate as ever, his breath clouding faintly in the cold. "Merry Christmas, Mr. and Mrs. Hamilton," he said, tipping his cap. "The aircraft is ready." Mom's voice trembled. "It's really happening." "Yes, ma'am," he said kindly. "Dinner at altitude." I stepped out of the cabin door as the stairs lowered, the winter wind catching my coat. My family stared up, blinking against the glare of the runway lights. My parents, my siblings, my brother-in-law, all bundled in scarves and confusion. "Come on," I said, smiling. "It's warm inside." They climbed the stairs slowly, reverently. Mom hesitated halfway, pausing to look at me. Her voice cracked. "You really came back for Christmas." I said I would. When she stepped into the cabin, she gasped. The interior was transformed, not an office now, but a dining suite. The long, polished table gleamed under soft gold lighting. Crystal glasses shimmered, and white linen napkins rested beside porcelain plates embossed with my company's insignia. At the far end stood two servers in formal attire arranging dishes from Le Bernardin's silver platters of roast duck, truffled potatoes, glazed carrots, and freshly baked bread. The air smelled faintly of butter and pine. "This is," Mom whispered, unable to finish. "Christmas dinner," I said simply, "at 35,000 feet like I promised." The jet taxied smoothly, engines humming with restrained power. As we ascended, the world outside turned into a blanket of cloud and starlight. The city lights faded below, replaced by the quiet pulse of the horizon. For several minutes, no one spoke. The seatbelt sign dimmed. We leveled out at cruising altitude. "Ladies and gentlemen," Captain Morrison's voice came through the intercom, warm and professional. "Welcome aboard. Altitude 35,000 feet. Destination New York City and back. Estimated flight time 6 hours. Enjoy your meal, and Merry Christmas from the crew." Tyler stared out the window, the reflection of stars flickering across his face. "It's beautiful." Melissa's voice was small. "I've never seen clouds like that." I smiled. Perspective changes everything when you rise high enough. Dinner began quietly. Silverware against china, soft music playing through hidden speakers. No sarcasm, no mockery, just the sound of people who had run out of excuses. Mom dabbed her eyes. "We were cruel," she said suddenly. "We mocked you, laughed at your dreams, and you still helped us." "I helped because I could," I said gently. "Not because you deserved it." She nodded, tears spilling freely now. "You're a better person than we ever gave you credit for." Dad cleared his throat, voice tight. "I owe you an apology, too. I thought I was protecting you by pushing you toward a normal life, but I was just afraid you'd outgrow us." I looked at him. "You didn't believe I could." He met my eyes for the first time that night. I didn't want to believe it. Because if you could, then everything I thought I knew about success, about family, about control, would mean nothing. He took a breath. "But it does mean nothing. You prove me wrong, and I've never been prouder." The words hung there, fragile, almost unbelievable, but they were real. Tyler's voice cracked. "I used to brag about being self-made. Turns out I was being carried the whole time." "You built something," I said softly. "I just gave you the ground to stand on. The rest was yours." He wiped his face roughly. "I don't deserve another chance." "No," I agreed, "but I'll give you one anyway." Bradley raised his glass hesitantly. "To second chances, then." Melissa managed a watery smile. "And to not judging by appearances." I raised my own glass. "To growth, even when it hurts." The glasses clinked softly, a fragile peace forming between us. Dinner unfolded like a truce. The air filled with quiet laughter, the kind that comes after years of misunderstanding. Mom told stories about when we were kids. Dad asked questions about my business, real questions, not condescending ones. Tyler listened more than he spoke. Melissa leaned against Bradley's shoulder, her arrogance gone, replaced by awe. At one point, Captain Morrison entered the cabin. "Ma'am, Singapore just confirmed the government contract. 5-year deal, $500 million. I smiled. "Thank you, Captain. Merry Christmas." "Merry Christmas, ma'am." Tyler let out a breathy laugh. "Even now, you're still closing deals mid-flight." "Someone has to keep the lights on," I said, teasing lightly. He laughed again, a real laugh this time. For a moment, everything was still. The jet glided through a sea of stars. Below the world was small roads like veins, cities like constellations. Inside, my family looked at me differently, not as the failure, not even as the savior, but simply as Brenda. Mom reached across the table, taking my hand. "We don't deserve you." I squeezed her fingers gently. You don't have to. Just understand me this time. She nodded, tears shining. We will. Outside, dawn began to edge along the horizon, thin, gold, endless. When the pilot announced our descent back home, no one wanted to leave their seats. The air felt different now, lighter, fragile, hopeful. As we landed, I glanced out the window at the familiar rooftops dusted with snow. For years, this family had looked down on me. Tonight, for the first time, they looked up. The wheels touched the earth softly, the engines exhaling. Mom leaned toward me. So she whispered, same time next year. I smiled. Next year, let's try Christmas over the Pacific. Her laughter broke through the silence, warm, genuine, real. And as the engines cooled and the door opened to the world below, I looked out over the glowing snow and thought, sometimes you have to leave the ground to finally come home.